We're literally just about to start, so without any further ado, I'll introduce Sheena Payne-Lunn. I think that your correct title is Historic Environment Record Officer. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. Yeah. Not a lot of people get it right.
No, indeed. I had to look it up, I must admit. And many of you will have seen the Explore the Past, things that have been on social media, particularly Facebook pages, Twitter and so on. And Sheena, as I understand it, is the genius behind all of that. And that's what you spend a lot of your time doing, really, is just quite literally exploring the past and coming up with all sorts of interesting things about Worcester and its history, its heritage and such like. And thank you for that contribution to the city's life. What we've asked Sheena to talk about specifically tonight is discovering the history and industrial heritage of the Worcester Canal, because there's an awful lot of it, both history and industrial heritage, and an awful lot of resources which I think we can access to find out more about it. So I'll hand over at this point to Sheena, and I think you're going to talk for about maybe 20-25 minutes or so, and then we can have some questions after that. So thanks very much, and again apologies for the difficulty in getting into the meeting. Okay, I'll pass over to you then, Sheena.
Thanks, Joy. I'm going to attempt to share screen. So, oh, hang on, post disabled participant screen sharing. I think I need to be enabled to share, Joy.
I think I've pressed the right thing. Is that working now?
Yeah, there we go. Lovely, thank you. That's that one. Share, and then go to, there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, Joy was correct in that I'm looking at the industrial heritage of Worcester and Birmingham Canal tonight, but that word discovering is quite important here, because actually what I'm sort of talking to you about really is the sorts of resources that are available in order for you to go out and discover more about the canal and the wider history and archaeology of Worcester as well. I manage the Worcester City Historic Environment Record, hence the rather wordy job title. And that is the database of all known archaeological sites, historic buildings and monuments in the city of Worcester. It forms part of a network of historic environment records, which I'll call HERs from now on, just so that I don't spit my teeth out when I'm trying to say it. So it's a whole network of HERs across the country. We share a platform with the Worcestershire HER as well, so they cover the wider county beyond the city boundaries. It's a resource that has grown through the planning planning service over the years to support development management in our historic towns, cities and landscapes, to really inform planning and ensure that archaeology and heritage is considered at that early stage. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what that looks like, this is the database that I manage and I look at every day. It gives me a little bit of sort of funny sort of patterns in my eyes with all the dots and splodges all over the screen all the time, but that is the city centre. All of those dots and shapes on that map represent a piece of information. So if I were to click on one of those dots or those polygons, that would take me through to the database entry for that particular record. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm just going to do a very brief sort of whistle-stop tour from Purdeswell down to Diglis, with just a few sort of key sites along the way, and really just highlighting some of those resources, and then moving on to tell you a little bit about how you can discover more about that. So there we are. That's a map of the canal up at top end of Purdeswell. So you've got the railway going north to south there, and the canal approximately east-west. You're in the middle of the Rodway, Lansdowne Rodsway estate there, which was the Cadbury factory. So moving on to the next one, there we go. There's a nice early oblique aerial photograph of the Cadbury factory in 1931. This is taken from the National Record of the Historic Environment, so it actually belongs to Historic England, the copyright on this. And that's an important point to make about our record, is that it's actually not an archive in itself, but a signpost to all sorts of other records and archives that are available. We do have some original material in there, but that's more accident rather than design, and we're actually seeking to pull together all known sort of resources for any given site. So there we go. We've got the sort of running across the foreground there is Blackpole Road with the bridge going over the canal, and then the factory buildings of the Cadbury warehouse and factory there, which was originally built as a munitions factory during World War I. So a lot of this talk is really about the industries that have grown up alongside the canal, and obviously the canal's presence facilitating those. And the Cadbury factory really was situated specifically because it had all those great transport links. You've got the roadway there, you've got the canal, and you've got the railway passing through the site as well, just over the back there. So moving slightly further down the canal there, that's one of the top locks up at the top end of top end of Purd as well. Getting my sites mixed up. And what I really wanted to highlight there is these are our young archaeologists from the Worcestershire Young Archaeologists Club. We do a lot of work with young people in the city and county. And this is some work that they did on heritage at risk, actually going out and recording some of our sites around the city. They specifically looked at some of the locally listed buildings and structures along the canal and assessing them for their condition. Most of which were in pretty good nick, I have to say. So we were doing okay there. But really, again, what that's illustrating is another of the types of resources that we have linked to the HER. So survey data and survey information forms a key part of it. Moving a little bit further down to Purd as well, and of course many of you will know that Purd as well was an airfield during the Second World War and became RAF Purd as well, so an RAF base. This highlights one of the resources that we have, which is a huge survey undertaken by volunteers, particularly in the 1990s, but continued until quite recently. It was called the Defence of Britain. Specifically, the Defence of Worcestershire volunteers did this piece of work. And they did a huge amount of research on the base at Purd as well. And this is just an illustration of some of the material that's there. So on the right-hand side there, you've got a site plan with all of those World War II buildings all labelled up there. And then on the left-hand side, slightly grotty copy, so apologies for that. But that's an image of the sentry position on the canal footbridge that passes on over from Purd as well. So a sentry position that would originally have had a wooden superstructure above it. So moving a little bit further down now, we're on to Gregory's Mill and Gregory's Bank. You can see again here, there are lots of sort of points and polygons on this map, which again are points of information on the Historic Environment Record. They're all numbered up there. You can see there's quite a few in this area. And this is an example of some of the historic mapping that we've got that supports that. So Gregory's Mill, a site that predates the canal, just off to the west of the canal, by the industrial estate of Gregory's Mill Bank. And you can just see it there. It's the sort of the green. Is it? I keep pointing at the screen. It doesn't really help you, does it? But in fact, does the pointer work? Can you see my pointer when I use that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll use the pointer. So you can see this sort of green shape here is a land plot, and in the corner of it there is Gregory's Mill. These maps are accompanied by terrier books, so all of those letters and numbers have an accompanying entry which tells you a little bit about the land ownership, land use, and quite often things like field names and so on. So that's a really useful resource. But again, that one is before the advent of the canal. This one was drawn in about 1751. So moving a little bit further forward in time, so the opposite side of the canal to Gregory's Mill, we have Gregory's Bank, Barker's Brickworks, and they were producing bricks from the 19th century and had their patented climax kiln, which is the circular kiln you see in the middle there. Again, this is an illustration of a resource that is taken from another website. This is taken from the Malvern Industrial Archaeological Circle, miac.co.uk, but linked through from our database so that we've got that piece of information. But a really lovely illustration of that site, and you'll probably be aware of the information panel that I think reproduces this one. So, and again, on the opposite side of the canal, St George's Lane and the football club in 1951. You can just see the chimney of the brickworks there on the left-hand side of that left-hand image. These are examples of the huge collection of historic photos that we have as part of the HER. If any of you are familiar with the quizzes that we've been doing, the online quizzes, that's the collection that we've been sharing via those, and we've had a huge amount of interest in those. We've had something like 120,000 participations in those quizzes over the last year or so, which is just incredible. But there are around 40,000 of these images, so we've got quite a lot of them to go at yet. So and we will be, as I'll talk about a little bit more later, we'll be sharing a lot more of those in the months and years to come. And so there's just another of those images. The date on that's wrong, actually. That's 1960s, and that's an image that was taken by our Board of Health Inspector, Tom Marsden, who went around and looked at properties that were basically unfit for human habitation, and many thousands of properties were identified for demolition during that period, based on the Housing Act of 1957. Unfortunately, St George's Tavern was one of those properties that disappeared around that time, to be replaced by the Cavalier pub, which in itself has been more recently demolished. But you can just see the stands of the football club in the background there. So moving on down canal towards Lowesmoor Wharf. Again, this is a lovely example of one of the historic maps that we have in our sort of reference collection. This one is by Joseph Crisp in 1832, and that illustrates the Lowesmoor Wharf very early on, not long after the construction of the canal, and already you can see the buildings that are growing up around the basin there, as well as the gasworks just over to the right there. And I just wanted to show an example of some of the archive material that we're referencing from the HER. So this is an example of the historic building applications collection. There are around 8,500 of these plans and elevation drawings. There's all sorts of detailed information that come with these. They start from 1865 and run until the advent of the Town and Country Planning Act of 1948. So this is pre-planning, but these were produced to and submitted to the City Council during those years, just to really ensure that they were complying with building regulations and so on. So there are some absolutely beautiful drawings and illustrations. This is a fairly simplistic one by the standards of the collection, but this is a nice relevant one. So this is a warehouse for Needham and Walker on Lowesmoor Wharf, and just on the right hand side there you can see some of those buildings again that have grown up around the basin. So just a nice quote here really. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those Victorian industries that grew up alongside the canal, and this is a quote from Worcester at Work, which is was a supplement to the Berries Worcester Journal in 1903, and it's rather gushing in its praise of Worcester industries. It says, "A Worcester man can boast that of firms worldwide, or of firms whose products go to every part of the globe, civilized or uncivilized, his city contains within it, in proportion to its size, more than any city or town in the world." I'm not sure how true that is, but they seem to think so at the time. And you know, obviously there was an awful lot of industry in the city at that time, and it's illustrated really beautifully by the supplement. So if you're ever in the Hive and wanting to have a look at a good illustration of the industry of that period, this is a really good resource for that. So just to highlight some of those industries, this again is another of those Aerofilms collection images. This one from 1921, so one of the very earliest of the oblique aerials that exist. And this is a view across from Silver Street, so roughly where City Walls Road meets Lowesmoor now, across the Vinegar Works. So you can see, in fact, use my pointer again, there's the great filling hall of the Vinegar Works in the middle there, and just over here the counting house of the Vinegar Works, which is now the trolley store for Asda, the most grand trolley store I think that ever was. But what this image illustrates is just the density of industry and alongside housing actually that was in this area at that period. You've got obviously the Vinegar Works here, and all of these little houses along Pheasant Street and tucked in along St Martin Street here. Lots of sort of Northern Light factories down the bottom here. And then the carriage works up on Shrub Hill up at the top, as well as industries like Mackenzie and Holland, various ironworks, the Vulcan ironworks and so on. So absolutely jam-packed full of industry. In fact, if you might just be able to glimpse just over on the right hand side there, the sort of the cone of the the kiln for the Granger's porcelain works, and that's the very last remaining bottle kiln in the city. So the remains of that are sort of presented as more of a sculpture now in the St Martin's Quarter complex. So nice little sort of survival there. Again, a little bit further along, some of you may be familiar with the Cromwell Street Railway Bridge that was removed quite a few years ago now. So this carried the branch line, the Vinegar branch line railway from Shrub Hill down into the Vinegar Works, and there are a number of these branch lines that crisscrossed through to the industries that sat there alongside the canal. So this is just an example of one of the slides that we have in our sort of industrial heritage collection. So on down to Sidbury now, really nice photograph here of the new bridge at Sidbury being opened in 1957. So as they were widening the street at Sidbury, huge amounts of demolition along the main frontage there to open up that road. And as you can see, that widening work hasn't quite been completed there. You've still got Bladders cycle works just in the middle there. But yeah, you can sort of see how that's progressing at that time. And then the commandery over on the right hand side, as it looked before the quite hefty restoration works that took place in the 80s and 90s. So again, looking at the HER and how that works. Here's the porcelain work, so just a little bit further to the south now. And all of these polygons and points and shapes on this map represent records within the HER. So you can see the sort of density of that material. We have around 5,500 records within Worcester City for what we call our monument records and our events. So a monument record can be anything from a below ground Roman ditch all the way through to a 20th century building and everything in between. And an event record is really a recording of something that's taken place, such as an archaeological excavation, a watching brief on a gas pipe trench, for instance, or a building record. All of those blue crosses that you see there are building application records. So going back to that image of the Needham and Walker factory, those all represent more of those building applications. And there's an example of a building record that's taken place of the bone mill, which is a listed building within the Royal Worcester complex. This is something that's taken place through the planning process. So we've been able to condition the planning consent on that site to say that before any works take place, we need to see a full record of that building being taking place. So that's a phased plan there showing the different date phases of the building, and that's just a small part of a much wider report, photographic report and sort of drawn record of that particular building. And then again, just because they're so beautiful, another oblique aerial photo, again from 1921, and you can just see again the density of the industry there of the Royal Worcester porcelain works. The cathedral at the top there, and then over on the right you can just see the old St. Peter's Church before that was demolished. Moving on down to Diglis, many of you will be familiar with the work of Dr. Pat Hughes, local historian who's been utterly prolific over the years. She's now well into her 80s and still going strong. I speak to her regularly. And this is one of her very beautiful reconstruction drawings that she's produced. Again, this is part of a much larger report, a historical research piece that she did on Diglis Basin and the surrounding industries. And it's just a really lovely illustration that she's produced there, based on Diglis Basins in about 1880. So I said it was a whistle-stop tour of some of those industries and some of the materials that are there available. What I wanted to just demonstrate now is how you can find out more for yourselves and how you can access that material. And I'm really excited that at the end of April this year, we launched our new web platform, Know Your Place Worcester, as part of the Worcester Life Stories project, so funded by National Lottery Players. This is a collaborative project with the, and I have to get it right because I always get it wrong, the Herefordshire and Worcestershire NHS Health and Care Trust. There we go, I got it right. They're our partners in the project, and we've produced these two platforms alongside each other. Know Your Place Worcester, which is the resource that I'll tell you a little bit more about now, and Life Stories Herefordshire and Worcestershire, which is a platform that enables you to produce your own digital life story, and has been found to be particularly beneficial for people living with dementia, but is used across the lifespan, and it's well worth having a look at that. So just Google Life Stories Herefordshire and Worcestershire and you'll find it. But talking about Know Your Place Worcester, so there's our lovely logo. So here's the website here, and really what it is partly a simplified version of the HER database. So all of those dots, the red dots and the blue dots on that map, are HER monument records. So what's really lovely about this is that you don't have to be at your PC. You can be out on site, walking along the canal with your mobile phone or tablet or whatever it is you have with you, and you can zoom to the place that you're walking along and pick up any of the records of the sites along the way. So if I clicked on one of those points now, that would take me through to further information that's been pulled from the HER. And you'd be able to, on the spot, find out about the history of that place, which is really exciting for us. It's not only going to be useful for, you know, for me doing my day job, it will be useful for local people wanting to find out more about the place that they live and so on. So we're really excited about that. You may not be able to see all of the right hand side of the image there with our floating heads over the top of it, but just to say that there are various sort of resources there that you can click on and off. You'll see this sort of central bar down the middle here as well. This is just a screenshot, so it's not a live version, so I can't quite demonstrate it. But if you're in the live version of this, you can click and drag that bar across. And on the left-hand side there, you've got the 1940s Ordnance Survey map of Worcester, and you can overlay that on the modern map, so you can look at the city over time. As time goes on, we'll be adding lots more historic maps to that as well. So you'll be able to look at it from the 1880s and at other dates as well. But even more exciting for me about this platform is the ability for local people to add their own knowledge and information to the platform. The idea being that you can then use the official data set alongside local knowledge and the expertise that everyone has. You know, if you've lived in a place for a long time, you have memories of it, you might have photographs, you might have done your own research, and so this site really quickly and easily enables you to upload that material. So over on the right hand side there, you can see there's a little sort of pen tool, and if you click on that and click on the place, sorry, I've got teenagers upstairs crashing around if you can hear noises. If you click on the map and the place where you want to add the record, it prompts you to create a new record. And there you go. Once you've clicked on that create a new record, it just pops up with a short form. You can add a few bits of information, choose a file to upload. So you can upload a photograph, you can upload a link. You can also upload audio files as well. So if you've recorded someone's memories or an oral history, that can be uploaded as well. And an example of that, I've used one of the sites along the way as we passed by the football club in our travels earlier, and Worcester City Football Club have been adding a few records themselves. So here's an illustration of one that they've added, which is I haven't added the wider picture, sorry, but they've added an image of the football club in the team in 1964 to 65 season. So if you were to click on that record on the website, you can bring up that larger picture of the team at that time. They've also added things like video footage of the victory against Liverpool, I think in 1959, which yeah, we can't forget that one. And also interviews with some of their former players and so on. So over time, that community layer will build and build, and we hope we'll have that huge sort of self sort of mushrooming sort of resource over time. So there we go. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to include a couple of links there. So the Know Your Place Worcester is kypworcester.org.uk. That's my email address there as well if you want further information. Obviously, if you are wanting to add material yourself and you need any support in doing that, please do get in touch, because we'd be really delighted to include any material that you might want to put up there, whether that be, you know, when you're sort of having your wanders along the canal, if you're doing any survey work potentially, anything from recording the condition of a bridge to further research that you might have done yourselves. All of that's really welcome. We're on Twitter, so WOR City Heritage. And then just on the right hand side, and I apologize for my freeze frame face on the video there, but we've also got a YouTube video for the Worcester Life Stories project. And this is a screen grab from our recent Battle of the Boozers pub quiz, which a number of city pubs got involved with. And also it just illustrates the new exhibition at the Museum and Art Gallery, with a few more of those lovely photographs illustrated there. So do go and visit that. It's running until February next year, so you've got plenty of time. And yeah, feedback, anything that you'd like to, we'd be really delighted to hear from you. And that's about it from me. I'll shut up.
Sheena, thanks so much for that. As you say, a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but a really interesting one. And I think we've all gained a lot of information from that. I'm going to open it up to questions, but if I could just start with one. When you were talking about the Cadbury factory up at Purderswell, and you said it was on the Lansdowne Rodway estate, is that the Drovers Way estate or Blanquettes Avenue?
It's the one that just as you go over the Blackpool Canal Bridge, there's a turning on the left-hand side there after the traffic lights. It's that one. I think it's a Lansdowne Rodway, but I may be wrong. That may have may have changed hands. But yeah, so a lot of the buildings have recently been demolished, unfortunately. But we did do a volunteer survey project on the site before any work took place. So again, that is recorded on the historic environment record.
And just by the by, a very good friend of mine died last summer at the ripe old age of 96. And as a young girl, she would have been probably 14, 15, I guess. She actually worked at the Cadbury factory. And she used to say how all the chocolate crumb used to come down from Bourneville on the canal into the factory, and then it got turned into whatever it was they manufactured there by way of chocolate bars and such like. So she used to speak in those days.
It's lovely actually to hear those first-hand accounts, and that's certainly something that we've been trying to capture as part of the Life Stories project, because I think, you know, you can't beat it, can you, hearing firsthand someone's memories of a place, and capturing those for future generations is really important. So yeah, doing our best to grab those while we can.
Good. Thanks very much. Brand, I'm sorry about the difficulties you've encountered actually getting into this meeting. So technical hitches all over the place as we were starting. So you're very welcome anyway.
Thank you.
Right, any questions, observations, thoughts generated by Sheena's presentation there?
I was just thinking that Peter Morehouse would have been absolutely thrilled to have watched all of that.
Absolutely.
He enjoyed doing the artwork to do with the kiln, I remember, when we painted the hoardings.
Yeah, that's right.
I expect Graham remembers.
Yes, Graham may remember actually that my daughter was involved with that as well. She was at St Barnabas School at the time, so she actually did some of the painting on the hoardings as well, and absolutely loved it.
And certainly, oh sorry Graham, you carry on.
And we've done more. We've done other murals that are really closely related to what you've just talked about. Geraldine's group did the one of the Liam Perrin's factories and the other ones down there. And Peter and I did one of the football underneath that bridge. And the thing that struck me about what you're saying and that is that mural now is the only evidence that football team was ever there.
Yeah.
And it would be really nice if we could do something to make sure there was other evidence that football team was ever there. So if we could relate what you've just been talking about with the websites, and even if it was only putting up something next to the mural saying, if you want to know more, look on this site for these marks.
Yes, yeah, and certainly one of the things that it does open the possibility up for, and you know, we're all fairly familiar by now with QR codes as a result of the sort of track and trace and all of that sort of thing, but you can actually produce a QR code to sort of cite it at various places that would link directly through to the record on Know Your Place Worcester, and it's something that I'm quite keen to explore with things like new housing estates and so on, and perhaps actually including them on street signs, so that you could link through to the earlier history of a site. That's a big project for the future, possibly. I probably need to get this project out the way first, but you know, it's a possibility. Once you've got that material captured and online, you can keep on adding to it, and you can then sort of link across. So yeah, no, I completely agree, Graham.
But if we picked out, say, 4 spots along the canal, like for instance, Purdiswell, Lansdowne Park, the Commandery, and the Pocket Park in the Arbory, and tried to do it for those 4 spots, would you help us do that?
Yeah, happy to.
We're thinking future projects here, Sheena.
Absolutely. Secret plans and clever tricks.
Just one more observation, really. When the new housing was being built at Gregory's Bank, when all the industrial units were pulled down, there was an archaeology survey there. And I was lucky enough to be able to go and take photographs of some of the original kiln of the Barker's brickworks that was there. Some local residents had wanted to recreate the wharf, but the developer wasn't too keen on that, and it wasn't seen to be too good from a sort of community safety perspective either, so to speak. So we settled on the interpretation board in the end, but it was good to be able to sort of climb over the site, and actually I got photographs of the original kiln, so that was quite exciting. I expect that's well documented.
Certainly we've got I mean, obviously the archaeological excavation is included in the HER. Those are automatically sort of deposited with us, but any photographs, Joy, if you'd like to add them to the community layer, we'd be really pleased to see those.
That would be great. And one other, I was fascinated by this brickworks. Do we know at all whether the bricks were used extensively in Worcester? Were they for local building rather than going around the region? Or
yeah, certainly they were well used around Worcester. They were used elsewhere as well. There are records that they were shipped out beyond the city extents, and I don't quite know how far out they went, but they did produce a huge amount of bricks at that time. I can't remember the stats for it. Again, it's in the record, but there's a really lovely trade directory entry for the Barker's Brickworks, which goes into quite a lot of detail about the process and the numbers of bricks that they were producing every year. But at a time when house building in Worcester was absolutely rife. So yeah,
absolutely, that's fascinating.
There's certainly houses in Birmingham at the other end of the canal, up kind of Harborne, Kings Norton kind of area, that are identical to the houses that are here, as if they're made from the same bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible.
Right, enough from me. Anyone else want to raise any particular questions or points or observations there?
Other than just I've been playing with that website whilst you've been talking. Know Your Place. It's great fun. You just swipe it across. Once it loads, takes a little while to work load, but then you swipe it across, go, that was there and that wasn't there.
Yeah, it's like there's also a transparency thing on there, so you can change the transparency, so you can sort of fade in and out of the map as well, which is quite helpful.
No, it is great fun. What is the date? Because it's got obviously the older. It goes back to, what does it say when it is 1946? Is it? That's when. Yeah.
So the one that's automatically switched on is the 4th edition Ordnance Survey, which is 1940. So I think the sort of standard copyright thing in the left hand side is the sort of standard thingy what's it, but that's the 1940 edition. On the right hand side, if you click into the base maps and things, you can sort of change it over as well, and the 1st edition is in there, but at the moment the middle of Worcester, the sort of centre of Worcester is missing. The tiles that we got from the National Library of Scotland weren't included, so we've got to source those to plug the gap, but we're in the process of doing that. So the 1880s map will be up there in its entirety shortly.
Right, cool. Yeah, no, excellent. And I can answer your question about where the Cadbury's factory is. It's more like kind of Blackpool East Trading Estate kind of area. It seems. So it's just a bit further past our patch. But yeah, fascinating. Good waste hours on that.
Please
well,
do.
I know that my friend Betty, who used to work there, she lived in the Arboretum in Lower Chestnut Street, and she used to just cycle up the canal to get there, and she'd come home for her lunch on her bike and then go back. You know, it was, and she wasn't alone in doing that. I mean, it was a big employer, and a big employer of women at the time. So yeah, she had lovely tales to tell. She really did.
There's a lovely little sort of anecdote. Well, I say lovely. It's probably a bit scary, really. But so the factory was built in 1917, I think, for the war efforts. But there was a covenant on the site after the war to say that whoever took it on couldn't do anything to prejudice its use for future national emergencies. So, and obviously it was used again in World War II. But the Cadbury family built the houses over in Springbank Farm, right in the back gardens contained the ammunition magazines. So there were these munition stores right next to the houses. So actually, in World War II they did have to use the site differently. They didn't move the people out of those houses. They moved the ammunition stores. So yeah, interesting.
Fascinating. Good. Any other points?
Yeah. Did the young archaeologists take an interest in the canal still? Because I know at one point they had you had an allotment plot that you were going to do test pits and things.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking if we're going to do more kind of local history stuff, if we could link up with them, the sooner we can work with young people along the canal, the happier I will be.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they have a program that they set on an annual basis. So the ideal thing is to get in on the annual program, really, which they'll probably be starting to look towards next year's program now. I'm not I don't lead the group anymore, but I can certainly put you in touch with Paul Hudson that leads it now. But yeah, they're always looking for different activities and things, so I'm quite sure they'd be happy to do something on the canal next year.
Could you do that?
Yeah, certainly. I'll send you that. Yeah.
That's great, Sheena. Thank you. Good. Okay. Anything more before we let Sheena go? No? Right. Well, Sheena, you've given us lots and lots and lots to think about there. Yes, indeed. A round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Applause there. Thank you so much. We're looking at projects for the year later on, and I think there's a lot in that will generate great interest for us. So really do appreciate you spending your time. And again, my apologies for all the fiddling around at the beginning of the meeting before we... Not at
all. It's all part of the course, isn't it, with this sort of technology?
Okay, thanks ever so much, Sheena.
Thanks all. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye then. Bye-bye.